The Shadow Minister for the Environment and Rural Affairs for the Welsh Assembly, Chirk, is calling for an independent inquiry into the fire at the Kronospan wood chip factory in Chirk, near Oswestry, last month. The fire burnt for a week and was the third fire at the factory in as many years. Well, Llŷr from Plaid Cymru is on the line now. Good morning. Just explain why you're calling for an independent inquiry, firstly.
Well, it feels a little bit like a stuck record, to be honest, because you mentioned the fact that this is the third fire in less than 3 years. We've actually had 17 significant fire incidents at Kronospan over the last 18 years. So it's an annual event, if you like, in many respects. And it isn't just fire incidents, because we're talking about air pollution incidents, there are dust pollution incidents, that we've even had river pollution in the past. So it's happening time and time again. Now, there's a huge agenda in Wales at the moment around clean air, and Plaid Cymru and others are calling for a Clean Air Act. We're calling for legislation to get a grip with this. Public Health Wales, for example, they've said that air pollution is a public health crisis, second only to smoking, and it contributes, and we know this, around 2,000 deaths a year in Wales. Now, that's the context in which we approach this. And of course, we see then, in relation to Kronospan, regular occurrences, fires, pollution incidents, dust, it's really intensifying concerns locally, and the Welsh Government shouldn't just sort of shrug their shoulders and stand idly by, and we really need to understand, for example, with this most recent incident, why did the fire rage for so long, why the response from some of the agencies was so sluggish. There's no permanent air quality monitoring equipment at the site. There should be in the local community, and local residents have been calling for that. They had to move temporary equipment up from South Wales. They didn't even have any equipment in North Wales. So there are so many questions, not just around this particular incident, but because, of course, we've seen this pattern of incidents happen time and time again over many, many years.
You mentioned there about the fact it took 48 hours for any form of air quality monitoring on the site. When it was monitored, there was some quite worrying findings, weren't there? Which must be a huge concern for people living there.
Well, indeed. And then, of course, that introduces the question of transparency and making sure that the community actually know what risks, if any, there are to their health as a consequence of some of these incidents. There were irritants, including formaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen, that were detected in the air. And of course, this was 48 hours after the fire started, or after the monitoring equipment was in place. If it was there when the fire was at its worst, then I'm sure some of the results would be even more startling. So these are huge causes for concern. And we know, of course, that some of the consequences of air pollution include reduced lung function, respiratory infections, aggravated asthma. There's emerging evidence that actually it suggests that it can affect diabetes and neurological development in children. We know air pollution causes many cancers. So local residents deserve, at the very least, the reassurance that this is being monitored properly, that there's transparency around that monitoring, that people know exactly what's coming from the site, so that they can be confident that their children and their families are safe. The local school during the fire had to keep the children indoors, and there's reports of 2 children having been taken to hospital as well. So there are so many questions that aren't being answered, and I'm not content that the Welsh Government are just saying, well, we're confident that everything's okay. The local community isn't confident, I'm not confident, and we just need those answers.
Have you been in touch with Kronospan? Have you heard from them?
Well, I have indeed, because I was particularly keen to talk to them and to visit them, just to understand their side of the story, because there'll always be 2 sides to every story. But as yet, I'm still awaiting a reply, and maybe that tells us something as well.
Do you think you're going to get you're calling for a response from the Welsh Government to make sure this doesn't happen again? How can you guarantee that's going to happen?
Well, look, there will be fires in all contexts and in all situations, and regrettably, I'm sure there will be other sort of pollution incidents as well. What we need to be sure is that those are being minimised, that everything's being done to ensure that when they do happen, then there's no risk to the public, or at least the risk to the public is minimised. But also, it's this lack of transparency. We need to understand exactly what happened at the site in Kronospan, and we need to know exactly what kind of pollution was emitted over Chirk and the surrounding areas. Without that, then really we can't build that relationship of trust. It's a big employer. Kronospan is a big employer locally, and we want to protect those jobs.
Okay.
We want to grow those jobs, but we also want to protect public health.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. That's Llŷr, Shadow Minister for the Environment and Rural Affairs for the Welsh Assembly here on BBC Radio Shropshire.